everyone! My name is Rebecca and welcome back to my channel. I have a lot to show you today. So I posted a poll on Instagram and here on my community tab and over on my Patreon to ask you all what video you would want to see today, whether you would want to see undergarment hacks for historical costuming or you would want to see an 18th century speed run, and the undergarment hacks won, as you can probably tell by the title. So today we are going to be looking at a whole bunch of my undergarments. This is a follow-up video to my 100 years of historical undergarments video, which I will link up above in the corner and also down below in the description. But this is a video all about what I do to make my undergarments go further, to make them work for multiple eras, and just to kind of make things easier on myself as far as like making undergarments goes, because as you probably know, it kind of sucks to make undergarments. Like, nobody sees them, but you need them to get the right shape because otherwise your proportions and your silhouettes and everything are going to be totally off, but nobody sees them. So they're just kind of a pain to make because you put all this hard work into your undergarments and then nobody sees them. So today we are going to look at just how to make your life easier as far as your undergarments go. I'm going to kind of divide this video into segments. So things like corsets versus petticoats versus other undergarments, other hacks, etc. And also I'm going to attempt to maybe do this chronologically. We'll see if that actually works, but let's go ahead and dive in. We are going to start this whole thing off with chemises. So this is my like Ren Fair smock, whatever they called them then. Now, I started with Ren Fairs when I first got into historical costuming, but I was not approaching it necessarily from a historically accurate standpoint. And by necessarily, I mean not at all. So anyway, I made what I call my Franken smock here. And originally this was actually a double hack, and I'll explain how that worked, but it is now just a single hack. And the hack here is that I used nice fabric, yeah, not historically accurate fabric, but nice fabric on the sleeves and also on the neckline here. Basically, everywhere that this was going to show outside of my bodice and such, that's what I used. And then down here for the body, this is just quilting cotton. I think it's slightly patterned. Yeah, it is. It's slightly patterned quilting cotton from the quilting cotton section of Joann's. But this was the nice stuff. This was when I had just graduated college, so I was super on a budget, working for Disney at the time and making $0. So yeah, I didn't have much money to spend. And so I splurged on this nice little pin-tucked lacy fabric for sleeves and for neckline, and then went with the cheap stuff otherwise. Now that is hack number one, is make the parts that show nice, make the parts that don't show not nice, make them cheap. And hack number two is that this part right here actually used to be unattached from this bodice right here. So when I first made this, I was trying to aim for something that I could use both as like kind of a collar, you know, open like this type thing, and also something that I could use where I could button this part together up here and have this part open like a partlet. So I had left this open right here so that it could be folded out of the way, and otherwise it had a hook right here that would bring it together to hook when I wanted it to look like this. But then I realized I never used it as a partlet. After several years of having this and using this always like this, I had yet to actually use it as a partlet, so I did wind up sewing this shut, but it would have worked if I had wanted it to be able to work like this and have that V open up from here. So that is hack number one. Let's move on to hack number two. Hack number two, you do not need separate shifts and chemises for every single era. This one right here, I made originally for 18th century. I also wear it for Regency and for 1830s. You might also notice that the sleeve edges are selvage and the hem is actually just serged. It was never finished, and you know what? Who cares? It's underwear. So that's hack number two, part one. Let's take a look at my other dual duty chemise. This one's not really going to stay on the dress form because it is actually meant to be worn off the shoulder. And that's what I was getting to with this, is that if you need an off the shoulder chemise, this one is supposed to be a mid-Victorian, like 1850s, 1860s type chemise. But you know what? It works really great for 1830s ball gowns, 1840s ball gowns, 90s, 80s, really anything that's off the shoulder. This is great. So a little yoked off the shoulder chemise, that's going to work quite nicely. If it is so far off the shoulder that you also don't really have a sleeve, you know what, just wear a camisole, like a modern day camisole, spaghetti straps, you know, and pin that camisole strap to the underneath of your sleeve and you'll be all set. Speaking of chemises, let's look at costuming hack number 3, old lady nightgowns. Because yes, old lady nightgowns, you know, the ones with all this lace and everything, they make really great chemises. That's what this is. This is kind of one of those old lady nightgowns, and I use this for a lot of my Victorian stuff, especially like 1870s or 1890s. This works super, super great. That is it for chemises. Now let's talk corsets. As I have mentioned in some of my other videos, such as my sort of 120-ish years of corsets video, I have some corsets that do double duty. So these are Regency stays or Regency corsets that are kind of more for like the 1820s-ish, but I wear these for everything from the 1790s through the 1830s, and they work great. Just pull it in a little bit more at the waist for later in that era, and otherwise you really don't need any waist reduction anyway. So that is the first set here. The second corset here is my 1860s corset with all of this great hip spring in the lower bust. This one I use for everything from the 1840s through the 1860s. And I know this one looks super similar, but this is my 1870s corset, which I use for everything from the 1870s through the 1890s. If you do want to see more information about any of these corsets, I will link that video up above and down below. One other hack to do with this corset, you'll see here that it is actually laced up with ribbon instead of cording, and that's because corset lacing can be super expensive, and also it's hard to get something that's like 10 yards long, which is, I find, what I need to lace up my corsets. But you know what's 10 yards long and really cheap? This super cheap ribbon from Joann's. This is the stuff in the 99-cent section. You get 10 yards of 1/4-inch ribbon for only 99 cents, and it works fantastically for corset lacing. Yes, I mean, if you wear it for a really, really long time, you're probably going to snag a ribbon and, you know, have it tear, and eventually you'll have to redo it. But it pretty much has lasted just as long as my regular corset lacing. So I do highly recommend doing this, especially if you're in a pinch or if you just want to save money, because corset lacing, again, is expensive. This is only 99 cents. Before we move on to petticoats, which will be the bulk of this video, I just wanted to point out one other quick hack for the 1850s, early 60s, and that is, this is the era of those great big pagoda sleeves on the bodices, and underneath you would have a kind of undersleeve that kind of like ties in underneath that pagoda sleeve, and you would also have a little floating collar that is attached on the bodice. But you could just make yourself a blouse, and then you get a dual duty garment, because you can go ahead and just wear this blouse for things too, whether that's historical costuming or history bounding or whatever. But it has the nice full sleeves so that you see that sleeve poof under the pagoda sleeve, and it has the nice little Peter Pan collar, so you get that cute little collar action with the pagoda bodice, and now you've got a blouse. And so when you do add that bodice to the situation, this is what you get here. You get your nice Peter Pan collar, and down here you get your sleeve that hangs underneath. And yes, you do have an extra layer through the body, but like, it doesn't really add any warmth. It's just cotton, and you get a nice ensemble that you can use in multiple ways. My one other bodice suggestion, which I don't know if I can really demonstrate on Lady Jane here, but is if you have like a sunken area here or whatever above the bust, you can add padding to your bodice if you want to, but if you don't feel like doing that, you can actually just stuff it with a sock. I've done this a bunch of times, particularly for this hollow part right here above the bust, just to make a nice rounded shape. Again, this doesn't at all work on Lady Jane because the bodice doesn't even fit her, but put a little sock right there and you get a nice rounded bust. we are on to petticoat hacks. So this first petticoat right here, I used this for my earlier 1830s stuff. You might recognize this from my undergarments video, but now you get to see it in closer detail. This is a bed skirt, guys. Yeah, this entire petticoat, the whole thing, it is all a bed skirt. So literally I just cut the panels from the bed skirt, used the ruffle of the bed skirt, it was a king size bed skirt, and then I just gathered it and put it into a waistband doing up the side seams. Super, super easy, highly recommend. It was just a cotton bed skirt. I have starched this. If you saw my starching petticoats video, you will have seen this there as well. And so now it's all nice and stiff, but this was just a cotton bed skirt. So, so easy. And look how gorgeous the lace and the tucks and everything were. I got this at a yard sale. I want to say it was $10. So, you know, keep your eye out at thrift stores, yard sales, that sort of thing for ruffled bed skirts with maybe lace or tucks around the bottom because they make fantastic petticoats. Time for petticoat hack number 2. Let's talk about fabrics you should be using for your petticoats, or that I recommend using for your petticoats. These 2 petticoats, because yes, there are 2 petticoats here, are both made out of cotton organdy. This one is significantly older than this one by at least a few years, and this one is also starched. So recently I starched this in that same starching video, and it has a lot of nice crisp body now. It's a little bit more like how it was when I first made it out of cotton organdy. This one, the organdy has softened up significantly, but organdy is so nice, especially when it's fresh or when it's starched. It is so puffy and has so much body while still being so light. This is just so lightweight. And this one's even lighter because it doesn't even have the starch on there. So organdy is super your friend. Highly recommend it. Normally I get it from Vogue Fabrics. I don't know yet if they have it back in stock. They were out of it for a little while there because of a supplier issue. So hopefully they'll have that back in stock soon. Otherwise, there are other people that sell it too. The other suggestion that I have here for your ruffles, make your life easier. If you can, rip your ruffles along the grain so that you can use the selvage for your hem, because then you don't need to hem anything at all. I was able to use the selvage for a bunch of the hems on this petticoat. Now this one, on the other hand, I was not able to use the selvage, so I did my next little hack cheat here, which is I did my hem as a rolled hem on the serger. So much easier than hemming this. It also helps to give it just a little bit of body. And you know what? No one is going to see those nice crisp hems on your petticoat. So it doesn't matter if you've pressed tiny little narrow hems into your petticoat. Just do it on the serger. Save yourself a lot of trouble. So much easier, and it looks really nice and neat. Highly, highly recommend. Another fantastic petticoat fabric for winter is matelassé. Matelassé gives you a quilted petticoat look, but this sort of fabric is readily available even from places like Joann's, at least if you want ivory, which is totally fine by me. And it just is beautiful fabric. I mean, look at all of that detail right in there. It's a little bit spendier, but it's so much cheaper than trying to make this yourself, to quilt this yourself. Don't be crazy like that. I mean, do be if you want to be, but I'm not ready to be that crazy. So this type of petticoat, a quilted petticoat, will give you just so much body. I know way back in the ye old blog times, American Duchess wrote about making an ugly puffer out of quilted fabric like this to really help give you body even just on the top half so you don't have the weight all the way down. That's a great solution. This one right here is actually a Victorian petticoat, but I do have an 18th century petticoat made out of this exact same fabric, and I just found a wonderful quilted duvet that I'm actually going to use to make another 18th century petticoat. So I will be doing a video about that at some point. I was super excited to find that at a thrift store. I've been looking for ages to get one of those. But matelassé is a great alternative, a little more expensive than finding it at a thrift store, but it's also beautifully detailed. So highly recommend, because it really gives you that wonderful body. This next petticoat is full of so many tips and hacks that I hope that I can remember them all. First off, this petticoat is made out of Pimatex cotton, and Pimatex cotton is nice. It's a thicker fabric than Organdy, but it has a lot of nice stiffness built into it, a lot of nice body. You can get it at places, I believe like Amazon even, or maybe it's fabric.com. I will leave a link down in the description for wherever you can get Pimatex. And Pimatex is just super, super nice. Highly recommend it for your petticoats or for linings. It is just fantastic. The other hacks about this petticoat are, one, you might notice that over here I've got a scar line here from a previously sewn tuck. So I used this petticoat for a theater performance that was under a shorter skirt than what I had made it for. And so I wound up just making a tuck all the way around, super easy, just, you know, measured it out and sewed it right in and made it shorter. And then when I needed it longer again, I just undid the tuck. It's super, super easy to do something like that. Doesn't have to be neat because it's underneath. That's the wonderful thing about petticoats. They don't have to be neat, I promise. So that is hack number one on this petticoat. Hack number two is that I use this petticoat for a bunch of eras. I did show a little bit of this in my undergarments video, but basically, if I'm using this for a natural form era, I use this exact same petticoat. And what I do is that I will take a little bit of like twill tape or grosgrain ribbon, something nice and sturdy like that, and I will pin it to one side seam over here and also pin it to the other matching side seam over here, and just kind of scrunch all of that together in the middle, holding all of that volume right in the back over the rear. And I will only do that for the natural form era because that's where you want the volume there. You don't want it evenly distributed around the skirt. And so that's how I use this petticoat for that era. Then for later, like the 1890s or even the 1900s, I will take that off, let it be free, and then let's discuss the train hack. So the train hack is basically that this petticoat has a semi-detachable train that I can add for whenever I do have something that has a train. Oh, hey, look. It's that exact same bed skirt, this time not starched, but I had extra ruffle, so I didn't even have to gather any of this up. This is literally just a cut off piece from the bed skirt that I serged the edge of and flipped over. So again, bed skirts for the win. But what I've done here is that I have created a marked line on this petticoat. Yeah, I know the hem is really filthy, but I've created a line on this petticoat. You can see it right here. It's this blue line, light blue stitch line right in there. And that is my mark line of where I want to then stitch this train to. I have a center point that matches up with the center point on the bed skirt part, and I have end points of where it goes to, and those end points do taper upwards too, so that over here, this train is just a tiny bit longer than the petticoat underneath, whereas down here in the center, it is an entire full ruffle longer. So that means that I can then just stitch this on with the machine. It's nice and secure, just in case, you know, someone steps on your train or gets caught on something. It's not going to just pull off like it would if you had snapped it on. I just sew it by machine. Takes like, I don't know, less than 5 minutes to sew it on. And then if I don't need the train on, I just rip it off. I do a pretty long stitch on these so that it rips off pretty easily. You can even use like old thread if you wanted to rip off even easier, because then you can, you know, just start it and just kind of pull and the whole thing will rip off. And it just makes this so easy to have sometimes a train and sometimes not a train. And now a couple of other skirt support hacks. This is my big old elliptical crinoline, and you might notice that I have connected my hoop wires with duct tape. Yeah, I didn't have access to any hoop connectors at the time, and I was on a tight budget, so I just duct taped those wire ends in, and honestly, it works super great. One other thing that you can use if you are talking about hoop wires in channels is you can actually use little bits of like plastic tubing to connect your wires together. That works really well too. You can just slide them in there. If it's a nice tight fit, they won't be going anywhere. But otherwise, duct tape works really great in a pinch for all of those exposed hoops. And finally, we have a big old hack in the form of my Franken Franolette. So I don't know if this hack is going to work for everyone unless you happen to have a short, wide bustle laying around like I did from my Jane from Tarzan costume. But I did have this short wide bustle laying around, and I also had this old kind of crummy hoop laying around that was a store-bought hoop purchase. And so when it came time for me to knit a Franolette, what did I do? I went and, well, originally I sewed them together, then I realized sometimes I need one and not the other. So I have pinned together this bustle to this hoop in several places here, just pinning around the sides. And what that's doing is that it is pulling up the Franolette a little bit to the back, or the hoop skirt to the back, creating a sort of flat front here in the front. And then also inside, we have this grosgrain tape that goes and hits kind of the back of my legs, and that also helps to keep it further to the back. But it is literally just pinned together here. I mean, this is really just, you know, Frankensteining something together, but it works pretty darn well. I do plan to make a Franolette, but for now, this is my Franolette hack right here. And that's it. Honestly, there are probably a lot of other hacks that I've used in my undergarments and such that I'm completely forgetting at the moment, but those were all pretty big ones that I wanted to share with you because, you know what? Underwear just shouldn't be difficult, right? It shouldn't be expensive. It shouldn't be time consuming. It should just be easy and be there to give you that proper shape and proper silhouette that you need for your historical costuming. So don't fret about it. Don't worry about making it perfect. I mean, if you want to, you do you. Make all of your pin tucks and lace insertion and all of that and just have the most gorgeous, stylish underwear. But if you are like me and you just want to get it done and look right on the outside, then I think these hacks will hopefully have been super, super helpful to you. If you liked this video, please do go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week with my sewing vlogs on Tuesdays and other costuming content like this out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi accounts down below. I would also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Heidi and Sharon. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!